On September the 10th, 2001, a fifth grade student in Dallas approached his teacher and casually told her, "Tomorrow, World War III will begin. It will begin in the United States, and the United States will lose." We all know what happened the next morning on September the 11th. The school spokesman said the statements were passed along to the FBI, but she had no knowledge whether the FBI acted upon it or not. But she did say, "It's one of those things I sincerely hope was coincidental." Now, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of skeptical about stuff like that. And I think it probably was a coincidence. Because after all, you do have to consider the source, fifth grade boy. But let's face it, the idea of predicting the future fascinates us. We all seem to be, we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow today. But what if I told you that Jesus made an amazingly accurate prediction of a future event? One that was recorded by 3 gospel writers and verified by a non-believing historian. Well, I'd be willing to bet you'd probably believe me, because after all, it was Jesus that made the prediction, not some fifth grade kid. And we find this prediction in Luke 21. Go ahead and turn there. And as you turn there, you're going to find that Jesus delivers what is probably his second most known sermon, what we call the Olivet Discourse. This is a sermon about future events. It also recorded in Matthew 24 and Mark 13. And over the years, this sermon has been the subject of very many scholarly debates, and no scholar has perfectly unpacked it all, and neither will we. But what I do want us to look at is the broad picture and nail down some things that are clear. In Luke 21, we find Jesus and his disciples in Jerusalem. In these final days of his earthly ministry, Jesus taught in the temple during the day and then spent the night on the Mount of Olives. And Luke writes that it was on one of those days that some were talking about the temple, that it was adorned with beautiful stones and votive gifts. And they weren't kidding either. The temple was considered one of the great wonders of the Roman world. It had been under reconstruction for 46 years and was almost done. It was located on Mount Moriah, and its location made it look like a mountain of gold. The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that when the sun shone on it, it radiated so fiery a flash that persons straining to look at it had to avert their eyes. With some stones as large as a modern-day SUV, the building was indeed awesome and breathtaking. Yet, listen to what Jesus said in verse 6. "As for these things you're looking at, the days will come in which there will not be left one stone upon another, which will not be torn down." That's quite a prediction, but his words were tragically true, because in 70 AD, the Romans invaded Jerusalem and ordered the entire city, including the temple, to be razed to the ground. Soldiers gutted it by fire, and then they literally pulled the stones apart in an attempt to reclaim all the melted gold. Hearing this prediction from Jesus, though, the disciples are absolutely stunned. And so they ask in verse 7, "Teacher, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when these things are about to take place?" They wanted to know the time, and they wanted to know the signs, the when and the what that will precede this terrible event. Well, Jesus goes on to answer their question, but he goes beyond the end of the temple. He also talks about the end of the world, when he will return to judge the nations. So we can divide Jesus' message into 2 parts. The first deals with a period of history before the end, and the second deals with the return of Christ and the end itself. But one of the challenges of trying to understand this passage is that some of the things he says that will happen before the fall of Jerusalem also apply to what will happen prior to his return. So let's look at the fact of the message that he has to, what he has to say. In verses 8 through 24, Jesus says, difficult days are coming. And he lists a number of things that we might call signs of the age. What is it that will take place? First of all, we have false Christs. Jesus said to his disciples, see to it that you are not misled. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he. And the time is at hand. Do not go after them. Now, throughout history, many have claimed to be Christ or made claims about themselves that are only true of Jesus. Just in my lifetime, I can remember false Christs such as Jim Jones in the People's Temple, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, Marshall Applewhite and Heaven's Gates. He said, in the last times, many will claim that I am he. You also hear war. He said, when you hear of wars and disturbances, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end does not come immediately. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Historian Will Durant once wrote, war is one of the constants of history and is not diminished with civilization and democracy. In the last 3,421 years of recorded history, only 268 have seen no war. There will be wars and rumors of wars. The third sign he gives us is natural disasters. He said there will be great earthquakes, and in various places plagues and famines, and there will be great terrors and great signs from heaven. Jesus, 2,000 years ago, is saying that before the last days come, there will be all sorts of natural disasters. How many times do we hear about earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, natural disasters, fires in Hawaii? And don't let the critics and the cynics try to convince you it's because of climate change. It's all because of the fact that these are signs of the time that we are approaching the last days. There will also be great persecution. Jesus mentions a time of persecution that will be especially difficult for those who follow him. Look at verse 12. But before all these things, they will lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you to the synagogues and prisons, bringing you before kings and governors for my name's sake. And drop down to verse 16. But you will be delivered up, even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death, and you will be hated by all on account of my name. Using the strongest language possible, Jesus points out that God's people will not be spared during this trying time. Verse 12 actually describes what would soon happen to each one of his disciples as recorded in the book of Acts. But in many parts of the world today, this prophecy is already coming true. And we're seeing more and more and more that this prophecy is coming true, even right here in the United States. There will be great persecution. Just because of the fact that we are united with Jesus Christ, just because of the fact that we call ourselves Christians, we will be hated, we will be persecuted because of his name. And then he talked about the last sign was the destruction of Jerusalem. In verse 20, he said, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is at hand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are in the midst of the city depart. And let not those who are in the country enter into the city, because these are days of vengeance, in order that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Woe to those who are with child, and to those who nurse babes in those days. For there will be great distress upon the land, and wrath through this people. And they will befall by the edge of the sword, and will be led captive into all the nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Jesus is describing in great detail exactly what would happen in 70 AD when the Roman legion surrounded the city. Many fell by the sword. Many others were taken captive. The fall of Jerusalem happened exactly as Jesus said it would. This sermon doesn't paint a pretty picture, does it? False Christ, war, natural disasters, persecution, destruction. But this is what Jesus says we can expect before He comes again. But don't make any mistake about us. Don't make the mistake of associating these things with the end. Verse 9 clearly said that the end does not follow immediately. And in verse 24, here we read, the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. We're still in that time of the Gentiles, when God's purpose is focused on Gentiles coming to Christ. And it's not all a bed of roses. So knowing that difficult times are coming, knowing that these are the signs of the times, what then should we do? How do we handle all of this? What do we do during these difficult days? Well, these same verses reveal several things that Jesus told us not to do. But Jesus insists that we respond with wisdom and faith. He says we should not be misled. When speaking of the false Christ in verse 8, Jesus said, "See to it that you are not misled. Do not go after them." Many people in the last days are going to be making claims similar to those that Jesus made, but they are lying. So let me ask you, how spiritually gullible are you? Are you able to see through the proud claims of those who say they know the end will take place? You know, there are people all the time saying that the end of the world is coming. I don't remember who wrote it, but in 1988, somebody wrote a big bestseller. He gave 88 reasons why Jesus will return in 1988. You know what he wrote the next year? 89 reasons why Jesus will return in 1989. It's still going on today. There are people who say they know the end of time. They know that the world is going to end. They give you the date and time. These are the ones who are saying that they are the Christ and the time is near. We have to be more discerning. And the way we become more discerning and not be misled is by knowing the Word of God well enough so that we can know when something is off. So we should not be misled. We also should not be terrified. In verse 9, Jesus plainly, directly, succinctly says, "Do not be terrified, for these things must take place first." That must is a divine must. In other words, God is working out His plan. It may seem like things are out of control, but they're not. Everything is on schedule. We will not be spared from difficulties because of our faith, but we will be delivered. Did you hear me? Listen, church. We will not be spared because of our faith, but we will be delivered. We should not be terrified. We don't have to figure out how to defend ourselves either. Jesus says that when we are arrested and delivered to the authorities, something positive will happen. He says, "So make up your minds not to prepare beforehand to defend yourselves. For I will give you utterance and wisdom, which none of your opponents will be able to resist or refute." God will give you irrefutable words of wisdom. So forget about your note cards. Forget about bringing along a tract. Just give your heart to Jesus. Trust God, and He will give you the words to say. He's going to give us great opportunities to worship and to witness in times of persecution. But we also should not give up. Right after Jesus said we will be hated, we'll be delivered up, we'll even be killed by our own families, He then said in verse 18, "Not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance you will gain your lives." Verse 16, He says some will be killed. Some will be delivered up by family, by friends. Verse 18, He says, "Not a hair of your head will be perished." How can you be killed but not have a hair on your head perish? How can you be killed, yet gain your lives? Well, this is exactly what Jesus had in mind, and this is exactly what he said when Jesus told Martha at the occasion of the death of Lazarus. He who believes in me shall live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Listen, church, man can kill the body, but he cannot touch the soul. Endurance is the result of being tested. We should not give up. But Jesus said we should flee. In verses 20 to 24, Jesus is telling the people of his day to flee from Jerusalem. He said, if you're in there, get out. If you're already out, don't come back in. Flee to the mountains, for judgment is coming. These are the days of vengeance when God was judging Israel for rejecting his Son. But in these same verses, Jesus is preparing us. He's telling the people of our day that now is the time to flee, for judgment is coming. We are not to flee to the mountains, but we are to flee to the person and the work of Jesus Christ. Only in Jesus will we be spared from the judgment of God for the sin in our lives. We should flee. Jesus is coming. Jesus will return. And in verses 25 through 27, that's exactly what Jesus tells the people. I will return. And he says he will return in an unmistakable way. He reads, and there will be signs in the sun and the moon and stars, and upon the earth dismay among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear, and the expectations of things which are coming upon the world. For the powers of heaven will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great power and glory. Jesus is using apocalyptic language which speaks of some kind of violent change in the natural order. We will experience unnatural disasters. He also says that his coming will be marked by dismay, perplexity, and fear among the nations. In other words, there'll be widespread panic throughout the earth. Let me ask you, is there fear and dismay and perplexity existing now amongst the nations? Are people frightened? People scared? Widespread panic is going to be unleashed upon all the earth. We've all seen pictures and news accounts when a few hundred people panic and try to escape from some tragedy or some disaster. Utter mayhem exists. But try to imagine 5 or 6 billion people panicking all at the same time. The Bible doesn't say how long this state of panic will last. But in the middle of this mass confusion, verse 27 tells us that Christ then will appear with power and in great glory in such a way that nobody will miss it. How different the second coming of Christ will be from the first. He will come as King of Kings, not as a baby in Bethlehem. He will come with power and glory, not as meek and lowly. He won't come riding on a donkey, but on a cloud. He won't be coming carrying a cross. He'll be carrying a sword. He's not coming to save the world. He's coming to judge the world. And everybody will see him, not just a few shepherds. In light of this, how do we respond? What steps do we take? Well, luckily, Jesus has given us several action steps. He tells us, first of all, to be ready. In contrast to the unbelievers who are responding in a state of panic, we're told to respond in hope. Look at verse 28. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. We look up in hope because something wonderful is happening. Redemption is near and we are being delivered. That's something to look forward to. But we don't wait until that day to get ready. We get ready today, since we don't know the exact day that our redemption is drawing near. Be ready. Second of all, recognize the signs. I find it absolutely amazing that we can read the signs of the weather better than we can read the signs of the times. In his sermon, Jesus said in verse 29 through 31, "Behold the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they put forth leaves, you see it, and you know for yourselves that summer is now near. Even so, you too, when you see these things happening, recognize that the kingdom of God is near." Jesus said when these final cosmic signs take place, then we will know that the time of his coming is here. But notice, he doesn't give us a calendar. We have to recognize the signs. So he tells us to be ready, to recognize the signs. But the third thing he tells us is to be alert and prayerful. Verse 34, "Be on guard that your hearts may not be weighted down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life, that that day come on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who dwell on the face of the earth. But keep on the alert at all times, praying in order that you may have the strength to escape all these things that are about to take place and to stand before the Son of Man." Jesus wants us to be prepared. He wants us to be able to stand before him when he comes. He wants us to be ready. So he tells us that first of all, we have to guard against being lulled to sleep by the things of this world. Worldly pleasures and worldly worries are both deadly anesthesia for the soul, resulting in the second coming of Jesus to be nothing more than an afterthought. John said in 1 John chapter 2, "Do not love the things of the world." Because those who love the world and things of the world, the love of the Father is not in them. So be on guard against being lulled to sleep by the things of this world. Secondly, we have to keep alert and pray for the strength to escape all these things he's mentioned. He's not saying to escape so that we won't be subjected to him, but to say that we won't yield to the temptation when it comes. We're in a spiritual battle. It's not easy to stand firm and to follow Christ. Truth of the matter is, we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to be totally dependent on him. So he tells us to be ready, recognize the signs, be alert and prayerful, be on guard not to be lulled to sleep by the world. Keep alert and pray for the strength to escape. Over the last several years, I've completed several half marathons. As you well know, that's 13.1 miles. I only do half marathons because I'm only half crazy. But for each one of them, I trained as hard as I could to be prepared for each one. But there's a part of the race that's always hard to train for. Like I said, a half marathon, as you know, is 13.1 miles. But all the training experts will tell you, you never run more than 10 miles when you're getting ready for the marathon. So that means on race day, the last 3.1 miles are no man's land. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, especially the first time you do one. You don't know if you're going to cramp, you're going to hit a wall. All you know is that the going's going to get tough. But you also believe that if you trained hard enough, you'll be ready and confident to run the race and cross the finish line. But you get ready months in advance. You don't start preparing for a marathon on Monday that you're going to run on Saturday. Well, we read a passage like Luke 21, and it's like we're reading about the last 3.1 miles of life. We know it's going to be hard. We know that there's nothing we can do now to replicate what it's going to be like then. But Jesus has told us what to look for and how to be prepared. In other words, how to cross the finish line. So what has Jesus told us in this message? He's told us that we prepare by being wise and discerning about false teachers. We prepare by resting in the fact that God is sovereign and whatever happens is part of His plan. We prepare by trusting that He is creating opportunities for us to witness and that He will give us the words to say. We prepare by learning to endure hardships so when even greater hardships come, we won't fall by the wayside. We prepare by refusing to buy the lie that the things of this world are the most important things. And we prepare by praying each day for God's strength to face whatever the final 3.1 miles of life may hold for us. Now is the time to prepare. If we wait until we see the Son of Man coming in a cloud to get ready, it will be too late. Now is the time to prepare. Listen to the words of Paul as recorded in Romans 13. Do this, knowing the time, that the hour is already come for you to wake up from your sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day is at hand. Let us therefore lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Now is the time to prepare. And church, remember, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Are you ready, church? Jesus is coming. Now let me tell you something. And you can bank on it. You can depend on it. Jesus is coming again, and He is coming in your lifetime. He's coming in our lifetime, because He's either coming back for His entire church or He's coming just for you. He is coming in your lifetime. When is He coming? I don't know. I have no clue. It could be before I finish this next sentence. Or it could be before I finish this sentence. It could be later today. I don't know when He's coming. But I do know this. Now is the time to prepare. And I can tell you, can't speak for anybody else, but I can tell you, I'm ready. I'm ready. Come now, sweet Jesus. Come quickly. And I can tell you that if you stay ready, you won't have to get ready. He's coming. Come quickly. Father God, we simply know that You are coming. Everything that You told us in this message, You told us to prepare for that second coming. Father, I confess I have no idea when it's going to happen, but I believe we're very close. I look at the signs. I look at the times that we're living in. And Father, they're lining up exactly what Jesus said would take place in the end times. So Father, I pray that everyone who is listening today is ready for Your return. That they've been assured of that salvation, that they know that You are ours and that we are Yours, that we know that we have eternal life because we believe on the person of Jesus Christ and what He did on the cross for us. But Father, there may be some listening today that are not ready. So I pray for those that are not ready, that they'll listen to the convicting power of the Holy Spirit, that while they're under that conviction, they will yield and surrender, confessing their sin, believing that Jesus died on the cross to pay the penalty for that sin, and professing Jesus to be Lord and Savior, and receive the gift of eternal life that Jesus freely wants to give to each and every person. Father, I can't imagine how this world can get much worse. But we are heading to total destruction. Without You. So as your bride, may we get ready now. As your bride, may we lock eyes with you, our groom, knowing you are coming soon. Let us be ready so that we can be with you for all of eternity. Father, for those of us who are prepared, let us stay ready. For those who are not prepared, may they get ready today. Thank you for the salvation that you've given us through Jesus Christ. And thank you for the assurance that we know that we have that eternal life. And because of that, we will not be terrified. We will not be dismayed. And we won't even be surprised at what the world is going to try and do. For we know we will be delivered. Thank you, sweet Jesus, for loving us by dying for us. And in return, we pray to live for you. May we take the message of Jesus Christ to a lost world so that they too can get ready, because you are coming soon. This is our prayer in your name. Amen. Do you have that blessed assurance? Do you know that you know that you know that you know that when Jesus comes, you're going to be with him? If you know that, then live that way. If you don't, then get that way. The altar is open. You come in whatever way God's calling you to come.